October 24, 2020. In the sterile silence of the UFC apex, a king abdicated his throne. The world watched as an undefeated, undisputed champion, Khabib Nurmagomedov, a man carved from the mountains of Dagestan, laid down his gloves. He wasn't just leaving the sport, he was leaving a part of his soul on that hollowed canvas. 29 wins, 0 losses. A perfect, unblemished legacy. A career sealed not by a contract, but by a sacred promise to his mother. In a world of talk and manufactured hype, it was the most real, the most honorable retirement in the history of sports.
To understand the secret war that ended Khabib's career, we must first understand the battlefield. The UFC isn't a sport, it's a narrative factory, and for years, its assembly line produced one ideal product, Conor McGregor. He was spectacle, he was controversy, he was chaos, perfectly packaged and sold for $99.99. Khabib was the opposite. He wasn't a product of the machine, he was a force of nature that threatened to break it. He didn't sell whiskey or customized suits. He sold something terrifying to the business model: certainty, the absolute, unshakable certainty of dominance. And that certainty was becoming a multi-million-dollar problem. The UFC's algorithm is simple. It thrives on volatility, on the what if. What if Diaz wins the rematch? What if Masvidal lands that lucky punch? This drama is the engine of pay-per-view. But Khabib broke the engine. There was no what if. The narrative was frozen. The algorithm of suspense, which sells rivalries and rematches, had stalled. For a business built on selling questions, a champion who is the definitive answer is the ultimate liability. This isn't just our analysis. We found someone who was in those matchmaking meetings, a source deep inside the UFC's operation who agreed to speak on the condition of absolute anonymity. It was like death in the room. Dana would throw his hands up in matchmaking meetings. "What's the story here?" he'd ask us. "Where's the angle?" And we'd all just look at each other. The story was, he wins, again. You could feel the money draining out of the room with every takedown. It wasn't about sport anymore. It was about damage control. They needed him gone. But the final straw wasn't his fighting style. It was his code. He was a king with his own laws, and his kingdom was invading theirs.
And then, the unthinkable happened. Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov, the father, the mentor, the architect of the most dominant force in combat sports, passed away. The world mourned with Khabib. Publicly, the UFC offered condolences and support. But privately, behind the closed doors of their Las Vegas headquarters, the corporation saw something else. They didn't see a tragedy. They saw a narrative opening, a golden opportunity, a perfect, emotionally bulletproof reason for their most problematic champion to simply disappear. Our sources, who were present at the highest levels of the company during that period, confirm a high-stakes, off-the-record meeting took place just weeks before the Gaethje fight. This wasn't a negotiation. It was the delivery of terms. The proposal was laid out with cold, corporate precision. One final fight. Create one last massive payday for the company. Then an immediate, permanent retirement. The official reason, to be pushed by all UFC media partners, would be the promise to his mother, a story so pure no one would dare question it. In exchange for this compliance, the UFC would grant its blessing to the Nurmagomedov dynasty. Lucrative multi-fight contracts for Islam Makhachev, Umar, Abubakar. Their futures would be secured. His legacy, as the undefeated GOAT, would be cemented and protected by the UFC's powerful PR machine. 30-0 was a narrative they couldn't own, and therefore one they wouldn't allow. But what if he refused? What if the champion, true to his code, chose defiance. The threat was never spoken aloud. It didn't have to be. It was woven into the fabric of the offer. A stalled career for his teammates, buried on obscure preliminary cards, endless contract disputes, a legacy carefully built over a decade, systematically tarnished by 1,000 whispers from unnamed sources in the media. They presented him with an impossible choice: sacrifice his own ambition or sacrifice the future of everyone who followed him. It was the most brutal, elegant checkmate I've ever seen. They took his greatest strength, his loyalty, his honor, and turned it into the perfect weapon against him. They cornered him. The conversation was basically, "Your father's dream was to see you on top of the world. Our dream is to get our most profitable division back in play. Let's frame this as a tribute to him. You retire a hero, your family is taken care of, and we all get what we want." It wasn't a deal. It was a corporate execution.
But you might ask, if the UFC was so desperate for him to leave, why did Dana White spend a full year publicly begging him to return? "I think he'll be back. The door is always open. We're waiting for his call." We all heard it. And this, perhaps, was the most brilliant move in the entire operation. It wasn't a plea, it was a smokescreen, a masterclass in public opinion management. Think about it. By publicly begging Khabib to return for a 30-0 record, Dana White achieved two goals. First, he positioned himself and the UFC as the noble party, the ones who valued their champion's legacy. Second, and most importantly, he cemented the official story into the minds of millions of fans. Khabib's retirement is his personal, emotional decision, and we, the company, did everything to change his mind. It was the perfect insurance policy against any suspicion. A one-man show performed on a global stage. But the biggest clues weren't hidden in Dana White's words, but in Khabib's. Listen again to his speech in the octagon. He never said, "I will never fight again," or "I am retiring from the sport forever." He delivered a very precise, legally sound phrase: "This was my last fight." Was, past tense, a statement of fact, not a vow for the future. It leaves the door open for anything that is not a fight in a UFC octagon. Our source confirmed this phrasing was part of the gentleman's agreement. Words matter, especially when millions are on the line. "I will never fight again" is a potential breach of contract if he, say, has a grappling match or an exhibition bout. "This was my last fight" is just a statement of fact. He fulfilled his part of the deal as of October 24th, 2020. It's flawless. He gave them what they wanted without locking himself away forever. And this is where it all clicks into place. Look at what happened next. Does this look like a man who retired from the world of combat? No. He didn't leave the game. He just left their prison. He founded his own promotion, Eagle HC, to build champions by his own rules. He became the greatest coach in the sport, guiding his friend Islam Makhachev to the very same belt he was forced to abandon. This wasn't the end of his story. It was the next move in his chess match against the Empire. Khabib didn't retire. He was liberated. He turned their ultimatum into his manifesto of independence. And while the UFC was searching for a new puppet king, the true eagle spread his wings and began to build an empire of his own, far from their control, far from their rules.
So, what are we left with in the end? Was the story about the promise to his mother a lie? No. And that is the most cynical part of this entire affair. It wasn't a lie. It was the truth. A beautiful, pure, undeniable truth that was taken, polished, and engineered into the perfect weapon. A weapon that allowed a corporation to get what it wanted while maintaining a flawless public image. They didn't break his will. They used his honor against him.
They found the one force in the universe that Khabib Nurmagomedov could not defy, his own word. And yet, did he lose? Khabib Nurmagomedov left the octagon with a perfect record of 29-0, but his most important, most difficult battle was not broadcast on pay-per-view. It was a silent war, waged not inside a cage, but in the corridors of power, in boardrooms, and in the depths of his own spirit. It was a battle for his soul against a machine that seeks to consume everything in its path. And by leaving their battlefield on his terms, even if those terms were forced upon him, he claimed his 30th and most significant victory. He saved what the UFC could never truly own: his name, his honor, and his freedom. They wanted to lock his legacy in their museum, but he took it with him and built a kingdom on its foundation. We've presented you with the facts, the testimony, and the clues hidden in plain sight. But the final verdict is yours. What do you see when you look back? The honorable retirement of a son who kept his word to his mother? Or a cold-blooded corporate masterstroke, the greatest Game of Thrones in UFC history? Write your opinion in the comments below. We truly want to know what you think. And if you want to see more of the untold stories of MMA, the ones hidden behind the headlines, subscribe to the channel.